Welcome to How Much for Just the Podcast. I'm Damo.
I'm Mick.
And I'm wearing a red shirt today. I'm Paul, or Ensign number 1, as I'll probably appear in the credits.
Indeed. Paul is our first red shirt.
Hey, welcome to the... We promised... Well, we don't necessarily promise not to kill you off before the end of the...
Well, that's okay, because I can just come back in a couple of episodes' time as a completely different Ensign.
Ensign number 2.
I'd prefer number 3.
Number 3?
I don't want to be referred to as number 2 to a general audience, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're here in the studio today to talk about the city on the edge of forever.
Yes, one of the best episodes of Star Trek. Well, arguably one of the most recognisable episodes of Star Trek ever.
Tops the list
and
in
it's
ratings a lot.
Certainly as far as polls of fans go, absolutely. It's between that and The Trouble with Tribbles from the old series, original series. What do we call them? Old series, original series?
Those old scientists.
Yes, well, tossers.
Tosses.
And
we're so easily amused.
We are. We're grown-ups.
Yes. But anyway, I made, in doing homework for my first red shirt guest appearance, I made it. I not
homework.
only...
We don't do homework.
Oh, yes,
I
we
made
do.
a terrible mistake in that not only did I watch the episode, but prior to watching the episode, I read the original screenplay by Harlan Ellison, the one that controversially was rewritten by pretty much everybody who ever worked.
Everyone got a pass at it.
But also, this is the version... Was it a Hugo or Nebula that he won?
The broadcast version of the show won the Hugo.
Best
Best Dramatic Presentation. The screenplay as written by Ellison won, I think it was a Writers Guild Award, not a science fiction writers guild, that's screenwriters rule. I don't. Ellison won a lot of Nebulas in his career, enough to build a house out of them almost, I think, but not for this one. I don't.
One thing that's probably worth noticing while we're talking about drafts and awards and things. Paul is the reason this podcast is named what it is named.
Yes.
Well, I think we should also blame John M. Ford. But yes,
when we were initially talking about the podcast. Before it had a name...
In a pub, after several beers...
Paul sent me an email the next day with a copy of the ebook version of How Much for Just the Planet. And
you legally had a copy of it?
And
How dare.
And the subject line of that email was How Much for Just the Podcast.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest means I couldn't think of anything better.
Yeah, well, neither did I. Didn't put a lot of thought into it, in fairness.
And also another thing, I was thinking, I realised that Mick doesn't have a surname.
Mick doesn't have a surname?
Mick does not have a surname.
That's interesting.
So, background if anyone's just tuning in, Damo and Mick are characters.
Well, Damo's not.
Well, kind of. In the context of the Damo and Mick's Backyard Quiz, we both play slightly exaggerated versions of ourselves. I wasn't sure I was going to be Mick doing this podcast until we actually hit record, and now I realise
which you can listen to where you found this podcast.
You probably already have. I mean, if you're on episode 3,
I would,
you've probably stuck with.
It's more surprising if you listen to episode 1 and you've stuck with us through to episode 4. What are you still doing here? Go home. No, please like and subscribe.
Anyway.
Meanwhile,
Harlan Ellison.
Who
does have a surname.
The late, great, and frequently irate.
I'd say pretty much permanently irate.
Pretty much permanently.
He's one of the very few people who's actually born a grumpy old man.
Benjamin Button from the start, but he just stayed old and cranky.
He grew into a curmudgeon, but he certainly was not afraid to fight for things that he thought were right. And
yes.
In the case of this episode, with some very minor quibbles, having read the script and watched the episode in the same horrific day, I have to agree that he was right on this one. The version of the story that he wrote, to my mind at least, was a lot better than the version that actually made it to air.
Because there is stuff in the final filmed version that doesn't make a lot of... Like Dr. McCoy, as a professional doctor, accidentally injecting himself with a very potent drug is a bit... Surely you're a bit more professional than that, Bones.
Well, one would like to expect so, but then he's a doctor...
I'm a doctor, not a doctor. Wait.
Well, I mean, they talk about setting the hypo spray for this drug. So there's some sort of synthesis going on. Surely, like, it comes with a control setting for
After the accident, they take the little vial off the end of the hypo spray and see that it is empty.
Yeah.
And it's been full previously. So
he was just carrying that around.
I don't know if synthesizing it so much as he's like measuring out a dosage to deliver. And somehow after delivering the correct dosage for exploding console syndrome or whatever it was Sulu'd come down with suddenly, he's gone and dialed it all the way up to max. And you're kind of wondering if maybe it wasn't an accident.
I want to see what happens. This is for science.
I think he knows what happened.
There's only one...
Killers! Murderers! I won't let you get me! Sorry.
Well, there is only one ethical way to perform an experiment like that. It's doing it on yourself.
It worked out so well for Dr. Jekyll.
The McCoy accidentally injecting himself contrivance was bad.
Yeah,
100%.
But like, correct me if you've read the script. I've only read sort of bits and pieces about the history of it. The original version of the script was there was a crew member, a crew member that was caught dealing drugs, so they were taking him down to the planet to execute him.
The original treatment that was written prior to the script being commissioned certainly had a character who was dealing in drugs, who was actually to be executed for murder, in that somebody was going to rat him out to Kirk over the drug dealing thing.
Oh, I see.
And he killed him. That was eliminated before the script was actually written. The original complete script as was written, the crew member whose name was Beckwith was using drug addiction to manipulate other crew members. He had the plan to retire on a primitive world somewhere, do the whole man who would be king thing. It's implied. It's only a couple of lines here and there, but he's using these drugs to control people to get the stuff that he needs.
Right.
And he gives his toady, whatever, who then gets ridiculously high, and while he's off his face, unfortunately is on duty in engine thingy and is found to be not in a fit state to be operating a starship.
Under the influence.
Under the influence, very much so. And after Spock's breathalyzed, he had a word, he decides... I don't know how they test for...
Turbo breathalyzer.
For the joules of sound in your system.
Some sort of sonic thing involving the plumbing.
They listen to your farts, perhaps. I don't know. This character decides that that's it. He's done with these things. He's going to turn in Beckwith. He's going to take whatever, because he's effectively come that close, and I'm holding my fingers very, very close together here for anyone just listening. And he decides that he's come that close to basically destroying the ship.
Right.
Beckwith, in a fit of about to get caught rage, smashes his skull in and makes a run for the transporter room, as they are in orbit around a planet that they're studying the weird Templar anomalies of.
Right.
He beams down, landing crew follows, and they find that the place he's been heading towards happens to conveniently hold a plot device, the Guardian of Forever.
Yeah.
Well,
and the divergence mainly is in the setup, I feel.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
At least the biggest, most obvious divergence. There's lots of little divergences throughout other bits, and a slightly more major one towards the ending.
Yeah. Because mainly because it's no longer a good-hearted crew member who's the third party on the planet.
He is a villain.
You've still got the same Kirk and Spock dynamic going on, but they've also got an explicit villain who they need to stop, not a crewmate who they need to save.
Yeah. The other thing I read is that the original version of the Guardian of Forever was Guardians of Forever, who were like 9 feet tall alien people who...
Two alien guys.
Who had a time machine. But then they say like, well, I mean, I feel like that was addressed in the dialogue. Are you being or machine? Both and neither. It's like, well, for budgetary reasons, obviously.
The way it was...
a giant styrofoam circle.
The way it was originally written was that this planet was in a place where various temporal-spatial forces or whatever converge and so on. And it was almost implied that the actual time travel portal itself was more a natural phenomenon. The Guardians of Forever, there's air quotes there, were the guys watching over it.
Right.
There was a city nearby, and the civilization had grown up around it.
Like a city on the edge.
Well, and that's what Kirk says in the script when he sees this city on the edge. It's an abandoned city on a mountainside, and that's how he describes it.
Oh, there's also a typo in the art direction that resulted
I was about to bring that up.
Runes.
Runes a portal surrounded by runes. Ruins, okay, fair enough. And the production designer come back and, what the fuck is all of this? This is what? The budget's gone. There goes the budget for the episode.
Very Spinal Tap Stonehenge.
At least it was large enough for them to get through.
Okay,
alternate universe.
Let's get on to the mechanics of time travel, because that's always fun.
Yes, I think really we should have talked about the mechanics of time travel before it was invented.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do that.
Well, it was already invented in Time's Arrow, which we did last week.
Yes.
Differently. See, this is the thing. It's like what we observed previously. There tends to be two types of time travel in Star Trek. There's the whole, you've gone back and created an alternate universe, versus everything is predestined and interlinked and you can't change a damn thing.
Yeah.
It's all a circle. This one is oddly kind of both.
Yes.
It tries to be, and this is another point of divergence with the original script, in that originally this wasn't in the treatment, but was in the script because Roddenberry had insisted on getting some more action into the show. In that after Beckwith has gone back into the past, immediately the whole universe has changed because it's several hundred years since whatever it was that he did happened. Mm-hmm. In the broadcast version of the show, the Enterprise is no longer there. Everything outside of the influence of this thing is stuck in a
just on a tangent, they take a lot of that on faith about the Enterprise not being there simply because the communicator doesn't work.
Well, Spock goes, nobody answered within 30 seconds.
There was one point of view, I think, of Uhura.
Well, everybody's dead, Dave.
Yeah.
Uhura looks up, but in Ellison,
I can't see it. I can't see a spaceship in orbit. My communicators, no one's replying. So therefore, what this thing says about the Enterprise and the universe being changed is true.
Yes. Well, in the Ellison script, they did beam up to the ship, but it wasn't the Enterprise anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I read a bit about it, like it was an evil Enterprise.
It was a pirate ship named the Condor. And the basically all the extras from Mad Max running it or thereabouts, who decide, of course, that all of these well-dressed, clean people don't belong in their ship. There's a fight. He
doesn't belong here. How do you know? He hasn't got shit all over him.
And Rand and a few others from the landing party remain behind in the transporter chamber to stop the villains who are on the alternate Enterprise from being able to beam down before Kirk and Spock can go back and put things right again.
Is this before or after the introduction of the mirror universe?
Well before, in terms of when it was written.
That's what I was going to bring up with this episode. It feels like that original treatment was sort of reworked. I don't think Ellison had anything to do with the mirror, but it's very much that sort of...
This feels like too much. So I think this is the opposite of the Time's Arrow problem. Where Time's Arrow was spread too thin. This maybe should have been a two-parter.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with this one, because it does make a few leaps for the sake of one budget, two time constraints. One is the McCoy injecting himself with the thing, because McCoy's a better doctor. He wouldn't have injected himself. Number two is that the tricorder has a recording of all of human history, including the alternate version of where Edith Keeler has died and the one where she hasn't, which they did the recording when the Guardian was first going through the the history of the human race, which is just old footage of cowboy and Indian movies.
It's the stock footage universe.
It's the stock footage universe. Yeah. But so the tricorder managed to record all of human history twice. Both versions, and pick out so that's clearly a plot device, just to say, oh well, this is what's changed, because in the original treatment, Kirk already knew that Edith Keeler had to die, or Edith Kerstler had to die.
Kerstler in the original thing, it's a lot more explicit. They mention a couple of times in the broadcast version of the episode that Edith Keeler is a focal point in time, which they sort of pulled out of nowhere. When they first arrive, Kirk and Spock are speculating about the flow of time and rivers with eddies and presumably fish and rocks and nice little picturesque pools for fishing in.
Sounds lovely.
It does. I think I might have to go and take a vacation beside time one day. But then later, halfway through the episode, all of a sudden...
Eddie's in the space-time continuum.
What's he doing there? And is that his couch? Later in the episode, Kirk suddenly pulls out of his ass, or wherever it is that he keeps sudden plot points, that she's a focal point in time. Now, in the original version of the script, that's there from the beginning, that there are things that can be changed which will fuck up the entire universe, and that travellers who go through this portal tend to be drawn to them. The Guardians have just a few cryptic words to give them about the colour of some things and so on. That eventually Spock sees all those elements in the one place in what Keela's wearing the first time they see her, and deduce, haha, that's her. She is this focal point in time that everyone's going to be drawn to. So we should say...
It's like the Enchantment Under the Sea Ball of 1985.
Yeah. We should stay close to her because we know that he's going to be drawn to her, and that whatever it is that is changed is something to do with her, and they put it all together. Whereas by the end of the episode, they never do find out what it is about her that's significant, why it's her death and not the death of another person who happens to actually play a fairly significant part in finding Beckwith that causes history to change. They speculate a bit, and one of their ideas is that maybe her ideas could catch on and inspire a more pacifist America that doesn't join the war as early.
But they
never really explore that. And the Keela that we see in the broadcast version is the first time she gets up to speak, it's like, spaceships, advanced technology, the power of the atom, it's all going to be great. She never really gets to that stage in Ellison's script. Yeah. She's initially just standing in the street and preaching to the people queuing for their soup about hope and about not giving in. The pain, the hunger is temporary, but depression, the sadness is something that you fight. She's trying to give people hope. And it's not until after she spends a lot of time hanging out with Kirk that she starts getting any kind of a specific vision of what that hope's going to be about in the longer term, and talking about other worlds, even then only very, very briefly. Yeah. But we never actually know why it is that she's so significant to the world when another character who actually gives his life to save Kirk in the final confrontation with Beckwith isn't. His death was insignificant. The Guardians say it explicitly when they return. There's always this mystery that we never know what it was about Edith Keeler that made her so important to the universe, but she was.
But on the other hand, if you've got an opportunity to show stock footage of Nazis, let's do it.
That stuff's cheap. I mean, the Nazis agents aren't going to go after you for their cut the way Ellison's
would. There's a couple of movies about Nazis, just one or two. I can think of at least three.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but they were using actual stock footage of the real thing, so that's probably in the public domain by now anyway.
Well, this does give you a kind of a good, strong moral core to the episode, though.
Yeah.
Kids don't do drugs, or Hitler has already won.
This is the world he wanted, and you're giving it to him.
Or maybe what he's saying is that we need a world in which people band together to punch Nazis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At the very least. I mean,
I'm down with that.
Yeah, my granddad was more of a traditionalist. He was very much in the opinion that Nazis should be shot rather than just punched.
Well, that's fair.
But you've got to keep the punching in reserve in case the bullets run out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Punch the Nazis. That one's justified. I'll leave that 100% in because I believe 100%.
100% punch Nazis.
Absolutely.
And I did like this about the ending of the televised version that was retained, is that in the end, Edith Keeler gets killed crossing the road. Bones is restrained from saving her, but the only reason she was crossing the road was because she was out with Jim. So if Jim and Spock hadn't gone back to stop Bones, she wouldn't have crossed the road.
It's a potential closed loop again.
Yeah.
Except that we know that before they went back, the time was altered.
Yeah.
So something Bones must have done. Well, Bones did seem pretty keen on her when he was
well, she also stumbled at the top of the stairs. The universe was obviously trying to kill Edith Keeler. I think this is what redeems it. Is like even in like the non-Ellison, very butchered version, there still is that kind of bit of thought-provoking kind of what if. But hang on, if they hadn't gone back and done this, or what would have happened? What really did happen? Did the Guardian have a finger on the scales this whole time?
Yeah.
You know?
Which I mean, like in his later appearance in live action, which is we'll get to in about 200 years, as you said.
20 years. 20 years. Yeah, we'll be watching Discovery season 4. Yeah, around about my 71st birthday.
Yeah. If presuming they make no more. Star
Presumably
Trek
they don't make
in the
any
meantime.
more between. Well, I mean, or if they do, make sure that it's all set after Discovery season 4, all in the distant 1,000-year plus future.
But so when we do finally meet Carl, we do like he is much more of a somewhat omnipotent entity where he's got the ability to manipulate timelines and put Giorgio into the alternate reality to test her out to see if she's worthy of going back to.
Well, he's also moved to another planet. He's probably changed his whole lifestyle. He's looking a lot healthier than he used to. Isn't he?
He's been working out.
Yes. He's not as round as he used to be, for sure. But I got the impression.
Haven't we all gone through a polystyrene donut phase?
Yeah, I'm in mine now.
Now I want donuts.
Because the Guardian seems keen for people to come back and visit. Like many such journeys are possible.
A question.
Yeah.
Yeah. The impression I got though, towards the end when Bones is over his Cordrazine rush, when he's finally back to normal, he's not yet really keen to get that next lot into him. That time when you're feeling okay. When he wakes up and realizes where he is and starts chatting to Edith Keeler, it seemed pretty clear to me that he was keen on her too. Like not quite a love at first sight that you get with a Kirk. My impression was that had Kirk and Spock not come back, had she not met Kirk earlier, she would have happily gone to see that Clark Gable movie with Bones and would have crossed the street. Saved her then. That she would have still been out there on that street, and he would have been able to save her from the truck.
I do like the Ellison's original thing. Like we don't know why she's important; she just is.
Yeah.
Like I like that sort of nebulous,
Yeah, and answering questions too definitively is
sometimes. Yeah. Like the episode. I mean, like it's still discussed now. There's been a lot of discussion over this episode, over the history of Star Trek. We're not the first ones to review this or deconstruct it at all.
Oh, no.
There's been some behind-the-scenes things that have been done before us. We're retreading old ground. But yeah, keeping it nebulous, keeping it like ambiguous as to like her significance throughout the history. Like maybe she was just the great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of Zephram Cochrane or something like that. Like we don't... Like keeping it nebulous could have kept the debate going in numerous other ways than explicitly saying that she prevented the Americans from joining the war, therefore therefore World War II was lost. By the way, such a fucking American idea that it's like, we saved the fucking world. Look, did you though? Like, yes, the war was shortened because of their entrance and like they certainly helped.
To be fair, the mechanism they do give is that this allowed Germany to get the atom bomb first.
Right.
That Germany managed to get their atom bomb across the line before Americans.
And they had V2 technology to deliver them already. And they were at least clear on having a strategy.
So that was the given reason. And like of all the takes you could do on like the Americans, that's the most reasonable.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
But they still end up with space pirates.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't change that much. It still puts humanity in space and planets at the same time. But they're pirates now instead of an enlightened federation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Edith.
Thanks. I think really we need to thank Gene as well.
Thanks, Gene.
Since Ellison did argue against having that action.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to focus on the emotional core story of...
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm surprised that Edith's speech is limited. Just like maybe one day we'll have atom control in the spaceships instead of like maybe like Edith making a speech about hey, maybe one day some children of ours will write an inspirational science fiction series on television.
Maybe one day we'll have food replicators.
Maybe one day a robot's head will be left in a cave for Mark Twain. Maybe this has already happened.
Maybe one day three guys will sit around a small table bullshitting about this very, very event.
No, that doesn't sound very likely.
No, not 50 years in the future, surely.
No. Why would you still be talking about a 50-year-old television show in 2023? That doesn't make sense. Yes.
let's do this. Why the hell do the consoles explode?
Why?
No, I know they have justified it by plasma and things like, but there is no reason for there to be plasma in those goddamn consoles.
There really should be some kind of a fuse to keep the current down,
They're just
so it doesn't
switches. The actual things they're controlling are not on the bridge.
Bleepy bloopy.
We have
bloopy, bang.
We now in this current day and age have things called relay.
It could be worse. I mean, if you remember Discovery, the walls jet flame from time to time during mild turbulence.
Yeah.
So really, the Enterprise is quite an advanced ship if it just explodes every now and then.
Look, I've broken my computer in many ways. The keyboard's never exploded.
No, it is a basic.
Okay, there was one time. All right.
My W key keeps wearing out, but nothing's ever exploded.
Basic OH&S, like who signed off on the design of these starships?
Seatbelts. Every single time there's a space battle, someone's thrown against.
No. We don't need seatbelts because inertial dampeners.
Then why do they go like that every time there's a?
Well, the inertial dampeners sometimes fail,
and they're very, very slow to respond.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Seatbelts.
It's like they're built by a 3-year-old. It falls down, and then several seconds later, it realizes I'm supposed to cry now. That the inertial dampers are like that. Something violent happens in this, and that's why they lurch the other direction several seconds later. But
sudden knocks is
What's the other? Oh, the Heisenberg compensators.
Heisenberg. How do they work?
I'm not
Quite
sure.
well, thank you. How are you?
Although, given how much Sulu really liked that cordrazine,
he did enjoy it.
He liked that cordrazine. I think he might have actually wired the console so that he could make it explode and get another shot free from the medical officer, rather than having to go and get Lieutenant Beckwith to sell him another shot.
I need a hit.
Yeah.
Just press a button, just go, oh, Sulu, quick. I keep saying inapprovaline because that's the other magic drug that Star Trek uses, but obviously wasn't invented for this episode. Cordrazine was invented for this episode.
And never came back again, I believe.
Cordrazine, I feel like it's mentioned a bunch of times.
After what they did with it.
I feel like it's mentioned.
It feels like the sort of thing that Lower Decks would definitely make a big deal of.
Probably.
And given our current track record, there's going to be some in Lower Decks next week.
Either that or the next season of Strange New Worlds will feature it, because between those two shows, they're covering every little bit of miscanon.
It's going to turn out Mbenga invented cordrazine.
Yeah, probably. How did they come back through the Guardian of Forever?
Very well, thank you.
they leapt
there's no portal for them to jump back through. But
the Guardian did say something about if once the timeline was put right, they would be returned. They didn't go into detail about how.
They absolutely lampshaded that one.
Yeah.
It was like, how are we getting them back? The Guardian just said earlier on, when it's all done, you'll come back.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
they just believed him.
Yeah.
They believed him that the Enterprise wasn't there.
Yeah. Carl could be just having fun with them.
It's only been a few hundred years. They could have waited. Vulcans live a while.
The whole thing could have been like an inner light simulation just messing with them.
Just a bloody space probe into the brain.
Yeah. Didn't even need
Nobody learned the flute. No, nobody learned the flute, therefore not Resican probe.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. and they came back in their uniforms too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been a continuity problem.
There's a couple of continuity problems, or
there's a missing scene where they're all in the past going, oh no, Edith's dead. Well, before the Guardian pulls us out of here, let's go and put our space clothes back.
Well, there is I don't know if it's in Ellison's original script, but there is a deleted bit of dialogue post Edith Keeler's death, where Spock's sort of consoling Kirk and says, "You could come to my home planet, and hang out for a bit," and. Kirk says something like, "Oh, we could have all the time in the world." Something like that. I don't know if that was in Ellison's script.
That sounds a bit twee for Ellison.
It sounds very to quote Ellison directly. That's the sort of utopian bullshit that Gene would love.
I do seem to recall something like that. I do also, though, specifically remember that when they returned through the Guardian Ellison script, they were still wearing their 1930s outfits.
Okay, yeah.
It's yes, at the end, after everything's been put right, after they've returned to the Enterprise. Spock goes to Kirk's cabin to have a little chat with him. For the very first time, refers to him as Jim rather than Captain.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is one of the things that was mentioned during the show. Even when he doesn't say it, he calls you Captain. And all the way through Ellison's script, it's Captain this, Captain that. It's never at the end when he goes to console him after the very bad thing has happened. He calls him Jim, Mr. Spock. That's the first time you ever called me anything but Captain. And yes, he invites him to sort of come back to Vulcan, crash on his planet for a bit, relax, get over it, meet somebody else.
Meet the Pringle.
Well, it's... The reason I've seen this bit of dialogue before is this is the Spurk shippers love this bit of dialogue because it's very much almost like I'll console you, I'll make you feel better thing.
It reads more like he thinks his planet is kind of relaxing, and having seen it in later episodes and movies, I'm gonna go with maybe not for a Kirk. It's great if you're into deserts and logic.
Deserts, logic.
It's no riser.
No, it's no riser.
Talking about the earlier love at first sight. Jim looks at a woman and there's a very specific musical leitmotif that is basically, Jim's got a boner.
And in the case of...
Wait. You mean there's not a musical cue when you get one? Okay, I need to consult a doctor. I'll be back.
It's okay. As you get older, that fades.
Not
the musical cue.
Not the musical cue. Just the frequency of the musical cue.
I think my hearing's going.
It's just transposed into a key that's more flat. I don't know.
As you get older, it's just womp womp.
Just Riker?
Just a. That's why he was. That's what he did.
Mr. Riker, your trombone is rusty.
Knock it off, Will.
Didn't Tom get the trombone?
Tom?
He gave Tom inherited the trombone. Tom Riker.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So Will was like, maybe that was the thing. It's like Will was like, finally, this is the excuse. I'm like, the curse of the trombone is upon me.
He gave him the horn.
Yeah, it works better than trombone.
Riker is just a gift that keeps on giving.
I don't know why Kirk is considered the quintessential ladies' man because, Riker is every other episode.
Riker's everybody's man.
Yeah. Quite literally.
No, I think, the Enterprise under Kirk is just an OH&S and human resources nightmare. It's just exploding consoles and sexual harassment. That's Kirk's Enterprise.
In that order. And drugs. Let us not forget the drugs.
And the drugs. It's post-scarcity. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. In a post-scarcity future, explode the console, grab a six-pack of Cordrazine and take a couple of Randy Yeoman.
2 tickets to Riser.
Did the Beatles do a song about that?
Ticket to Riser. Someone, dear Weird Al.
Is there anything else we need to pick apart?
We haven't touched on we touched on a bit of the behind the scenes, the writing of it, and
I think we touched on more of it than I really had in mind when I was coming.
Yeah, because the episode itself has been written about and dissected and discussed ad nauseum, and there's not much that we can say about it.
Yeah. And unlike more so, I think than any other episode, the behind the scenes shenanigans, about the writing. I mean, how often do you hear dramatic stories about the writing of a television episode? It's almost unique in that.
Gene brought Harlan Ellison in because he wanted that caliber of writer for Star Trek. And during the process, when they were going back and forth about it, he wanted him to be credited as... What was the...
Cordwainer Bird.
Cordwainer Bird.
Cordwainer Bird.
He wanted to be credited as Cordwainer Bird, and Gene said, if you do that, I'm going to make sure that you never get a writing gig ever again. I'm going to go to the WGA or whatever. I don't know if he had that sort of power, but he did.
Well, they did have the WGA, I think, was around at the time.
Because this episode was the beginning of their feud, which lasted until Gene's death. Well, they never got along again.
Cordwainer Bird was the pseudonym that Ellison would put on work that he wanted to disown, usually due to the interference of other people. It was like Alan Smithy for directors. I think it was David Lynch put Judas Booth on his mutilated version of his 84 Dune. But Cordwainer Bird was, several of his screenplays are broadcast with Cordwainer Bird as the writer credited on there. And it was well known what he was doing.
What was that series? Oh, didn't he have a...
Star Lost?
Star Lost. That's the one I was trying to think of. Yes. That was a Cordwainer, wasn't it?
That was a Cordwainer Bird, yes. But prior to Trek, the thing that got Roddenberry's attention, Ellison wrote several episodes for the Outer Limits.
Twilight Zone, wasn't it?
He wrote a lot for the 80s Twilight Zone. I'm not sure if there was anything of his in the 60s Twilight Zone.
Oh, I thought there was.
No, he's spoken highly of his time on the Outer Limits season 2. I think he said season 1 sucked, but season 2 was like one of his best television writing experiences.
And he'd won major awards for...
He actually said something positive about something.
Oh, yes. He won some major award for the screenplay for Demon with the Glass Hand, which combined with another episode of his Soldier was probably still to this day cause PTSD symptoms in James Cameron.
This was a little quote from Ellison about the question of the copyright to the original screenplay when it was being published. Does Gene own this or do you own this? And it's like, the original screenplay, the first draft, the one they published, it is the version that was mine from the get-go by the separation of rights clause in the Writers Guild of America contract we lovingly call the minimum basic agreement. He's had a lot to say about the WGA over the time and positively.
Absolutely.
And still, for fuck's sake, give them what they want.
Yeah, fucking pay them anyway.
Pay them. We would like to see more good television shows, and that doesn't happen without writers.
Yeah, in the hindsight of 50-odd years or whatever it is, you can see both sides of the argument. You see Harlan's version of it is probably a better story. It's better emotionally, it's better character-wise. Maybe some of the characters are slightly different to what they're portrayed on screen because we know them now, whereas at the time they weren't that well known.
No one had seen them.
But also from Roddenberry's perspective, like his vision, but also a budget perspective. So, some of the things that Ellison wrote.
I think the thing with Roddenberry and Ellison in this circumstance, like they're both similarly extremely stubborn people and would not work well together. They're just Then they would not. They are both probably got their strengths.
They have their own vision of what things should be, and when those visions aren't aligned, then they're inevitably going to clash. Immovable object. What is it? Irresistible force.
Yeah. And I think it's absolutely a testament to Ellison that this script stood up so well after so much was done to it.
Yeah.
Because the fundamental story was great.
Yeah. But look, there is the things in it that were clearly just like budget cuts or just for time constraints, like the tricorder recording all of human history, McCoy injecting himself.
The 9-foot Guardians of Forever becoming a polystyrene donut.
That exactly, yeah.
You could have put a guy in a robe on a box.
Named Carl.
Or named Carl, yes. Carl. But 9-foot-tall humans aren't impossible to do on a low budget, so long as they don't have to walk.
This is contemporary with Land of the Giants, isn't it?
A little bit earlier, I think, but I
although that was notably an extremely expensive series.
Yeah.
That at the time was like massively expensive. I only recently remembered that Land of the Giants existed. It's something flashback now. I was like, I've been rewatching it.
I remember watching it when I was probably about 7 or thereabouts, given where we're living in my memory at the time. I don't remember much except that I loved the show, which means I'm terrified of the idea of watching it because I might have been living a lie. I have a feeling that most of the stuff that I watched and loved when I was a kid was actually crap.
I'm not devouring it and going, this is amazing, but I'm watching an episode every now and then going, oh, yeah, this is fine. This is not terrible. It's all a bit contrived.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's just some other 60s sci-fi.
Yes. We still haven't mentioned Hitchhikers.
We did several times at the beginning.
It's Babylon 5 we haven't mentioned.
We have now.
Segue.
Ellison and Babylon 5 and Straczynski
and JMS keeps he's on Twitter, he talks every now and again about how he's trying to further Harlan's legacy by getting it adapted into various formats of whether it be comics or TV or movies.
All of it. When circling back to the Twilight Zone things, really, what you're probably remembering with Ellison's involvement in that in the 80s when they revived the Twilight Zone for whichever time it was. How many times they revived it now? Several million.
Yeah,
it feels like there's probably a Twilight
16.
Zone episode about the television show that wouldn't die, except that's Futurama now. But when they revived it in the 80s, Ellison was one of the lead writers on that. And I think the very first episode was an adaptation of... or one of the very early adaptation of his story, The Paladin of the Lost Hour, where they got Danny Kaye to play the lead, and a very young and at the time almost unknown Bruce Willis in an adaptation of Ellison's story, Shatterday. Where he actually demonstrated long before he was... originally, Bruce Willis was known mostly as a comedic actor because of moonlighting. And
because he just looks funny.
And he just looks funny. But he was in a Twilight Zone adaptation of an Ellison story called Shatterday, in which he did very good dramatic work, playing himself, a couple of different versions of himself. And, there's a lot of interesting stuff in that. Ellison wrote a number of episodes and a number of them were adaptations of his existing stories. And that's probably why you're connecting Ellison with
I don't know. When I was reading the thing, like I read that Gene wanted him on board because he wanted a writer of that caliber. But like, so he's obviously a writer of note. And I thought I read that Gene was a fan of his work on the Twilight Zone, but maybe it was Outer Limits.
Outer Limits, and he was also winning awards for fiction.
Short stories, and back when that could be a career.
Yes, it could once, apparently. You could actually make a living writing.
Fucking capitalist fuckery.
Boo.
That's one way of doing it. Where was I going with that? So we were talking about JMS.
JMS is the
support the WGA,
the literary executive for the
estate.
Ellison estate, and he is managing it with the biggest project. The one that I've been looking forward to is the eventual publication, The Last Dangerous Vision.
Last Dangerous Vision.
Been rescheduled again till to next year, but apparently it is approaching completion. Hoping, if you're listening, JMS, please just do it right. But do it.
Look, I trust him.
And JMS, if you're listening, just don't type "with all due respect" ever again.
With all due respect.
Seriously, I just like we're talking about putting shock collars on people. I want to put a shock collar on JMS.
Every time he types those words, with all due respect.
I would go further. I was like, if you take any software designed for screenwriting, I want to see triggers for "with all due respect," as you know.
As you know.
Little things like that. And if these things are detected in your screenplay, it closes itself down and emails
uninstalls it.
And emails your resume to McDonald's.
There should be an exception. There should be an exception for comedy writers to designate one phrase per show as a catchphrase for a specific character.
No, I think this is the kind of task that could be left best to AI.
But...
oh, God. Now we're fans of AI.
The entire American...
if we want bad writing, I can't think of anyone better.
Chuck it all in the blender, just pour the slurry out, hammer it with the thing a few times.
Yeah.
That's how you write a script.
Imagine if you could train an AI entirely on just Harlan Ellison's work, and all it ever did was spat out just
fuck you, get
of fuck you.
Fuck you, pay me.
Fuck you, pay me.
That was his mantra when asked to do anything free, and I completely support that. And to all of the producers out there with regards to the writers' strike, fuck you, pay them.
But yes, so we may be getting more Harlan Ellison stuff, hopefully in the very near future with the Last Dangerous Visions.
That was to be is an anthology edited by him, so there won't be as much of his stuff.
No, but JMS has said that he's trying to get other things made with the estate, but he can't talk about most of it because No.
But Ellison was prolific enough that there's enough stuff there to keep an entire industry going for decades just on his material.
Yes. Yeah. Don't get any funny ideas, you executive cunts.
Well, unless it involves paying people.
Yes.
If their ideas were let's adapt this stuff and pay people.
Well, there was one episode of the most recent season of Netflix's Love and Death and Robots that was adapted from one of his stories.
Yeah.
I haven't watched any of that.
Oh, get amongst it. It's good.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of it's very silly. Some of it's very dark. Some of it's very...
They're each a thing unto themselves, except for the one sequel.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I never got into it, because like I couldn't get a read on what kind of thing it was going to be.
It's a bit of everything.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like normally I try
I liken it like to picking up a sci-fi like short story magazine serial or whatever. You've got like a bunch of short stories in amongst each season, and it's they're only about 10, 15 minutes each. And you can knock the whole series over in a weekend. Yeah. But some of them are very good. There's Alan Baxter, who I am a fan of. He had a story that was in the most recent season.
But yeah, most of them are adapted from stories by relatively well-known authors. There's
Scalzi.
A couple of John Scalzi's there. There's an Alistair Reynolds. I think it's a Peter Hamilton. Several other authors I would be able to name if I was looking at the list of them.
If only we had some sort of device to look up the entirety of human history.
Some sort of like guide to the galaxy.
A tricorder of some kind.
One final little bit. So I've got one final little note from Ellison's initial treatment.
Okay.
Not the script, the initial treatment, the one with like the execution still in there. Just this line here that I just need explained to me by someone. Spock has passed himself off as an Oriental. He's washing dishes in a beanery. What the hell is a beanery?
Well,
I know I could Google it, but I thought I'd bring it up the table instead.
I'm going to Google what a
that sells beans.
It could well be, or a place
gives out beans to homeless folk.
According to this, I know the beanery. Yes, they're a coffee roaster in Brighton. In Melbourne.
I don't think it's that beanery.
It's not that beanery. Different.
Well, I mean, there would be be dishes to wash in a beanery.
Folks, we're in Melbourne. Beanery. Everything is a name for a cafe.
The Harlan Ellison episode of Love, Death and Robots, the Life Hutch.
Yes,
I will get amongst it.
Beanery, now an informal North American, a cheap restaurant.
A cheap restaurant.
See, that's context implied that I was hoping it was something worse.
What did you think it was?
Well, no, I had no idea. That's why I was like, well, obviously it's a place that generates...
Well, the term flick the bean has to come from somewhere.
It obviously implies a place that generates dirty dishes.
Yes.
So it kind of narrows the scope somewhat. But it was like, it's a slang term I have never come across before in my life.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of slang terminology. When you watch movies or TV shows from the 60s, the 50s.
But this is the thing, is like this was like a thing written in the 60s, set in the 30s, and it's like, is Ellison using 30s slang from a 60s thing, or is it a 60s thing that like he's just like
that's
that
a good
everyone
question.
would know?
Where did that originate? Where does that slang sort of come from?
So was he trying to be period correct with his slang, or was he just like being hip and with it?
Hip and with it doesn't really equate to me with Harlan Ellison. No. Like he doesn't seem to be going to the clubs and.
So yeah, that was my last little note.
I'm just looking over my notes and
boy was it worth it.
Script.
You know what we should do.
What's that? Go to the pub?
Well, yes, that very much.
So up for the
we should definitely go to the pub. What's next week's episode? It was
Stormfront.
It is Stormfront, isn't it? Because I remember I think you gave a chronology saying Voyager was up. But anyway, yes, Stormfront next.
Stormfront is next.
Hooray, more Nazis.
Oh, yeah. Nazis, not a meteorological themed episode, actual Nazis.
No, yes, actual Nazis. Well, alien Nazis, as I recall. Final thoughts? I
think this is a good episode. I understand.
How controversial!
I understand why Harlan has a deep emotional reaction to what they did to his work.
Yeah, look, I'm going to get you to send me that script because I want to read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what came out the other end was not bad.
Yeah, yes. Look, it's still one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek that there ever has been.
Or is that just saying how bad everything else was?
Yeah, Star Trek sucks. This podcast's over. We're never watching it again. No, it's Star Trek's gone woke. It's too bloody. Anyway,
it was always woke. It was woke before woke was a thing.
Exactly. Anyway, But yeah, it's one of the greatest episodes, one of the most recognizable episodes. You see a picture of the Guardian of Forever, even without anyone in the photo. You go, oh, that's from Star Trek. It's up there with that, the thin-faced, big-headed eyeball guy from the end credits of every episode,
and the Vulcan salute.
The Vulcan salute. It's quintessential Trek.
Yeah,
it's one of the if you're trying to get a friend into Star Trek. And you're not sure where to start, because where the fuck would you start? Not where we have, but this episode is probably one from the original series that you would show them.
Yeah.
You show them this one, you show them Measure of a Man, you show them
Trouble with Tribbles.
Trouble with Tribbles. You give them a cross section of the poignant, thinky episodes, the fun, silly episodes.
Spock's brain.
And you don't show them Spock's brain.
You don't show anybody Spock's brain.
Never show them. Don't show them Beverly fucking a ghost. Don't show them the salamanders. Don't show them Alan Moraine move along home.
I think there are parts of the original series that have not aged as well as our nostalgia would like us to think that they
There's
have.
quite a lot, yeah.
And this one's actually aged reasonably well. It doesn't have quite as much of the stuff that doesn't work anymore. Largely because it's set in the 1930s mostly.
But it does come down to like the little moral plays that Star Trek is best known for. Do you let a woman die to save the future?
Do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one?
Or the one.
And was she the one? And this has been talked about in fandom for ages. Edith Keeler was the one. His one true love. It wasn't really shown as well as I would have liked in the episode. Just how long they spent in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm. At least it was longer than 3 hours.
Yes, it was certainly longer than 3 hours, but it could well have been months. They'd managed to go from nothing to earning enough to buy pretty much everything except gold and platinum that Spock needed, and at 10, 15 cents an hour that they're getting paid.
It looks to me like about a month. I'd call it about a month.
So it's not an unreasonable time to develop at least the beginnings of that kind of feeling for somebody. And so having that as end the way it did, it's entirely reasonable. And to assume that, that's it. Kirk's spending the rest of his career banging anything that moves, but still pining for Edith Keeler.
Yeah.
And creating a lot of work for Starfleet human resources.
Well, they were always going to be busy anyway, what with the exploding consoles and the rampant quadrazine use in the ranks.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, that's it. Let's go get some quadrazine.
Yeah.
A pint of quadrazine.
Pints of quadrazine all round.
Anyone want to start a craft brewery? I've got some ideas.
Killers! Murderers!
I have some ideas.
Oh, why did you get me?
Do you want to say your thing?
The computer and program?
Or you just did?
Computer and program.
Engage. Mr. Worf, throw him in the brig.
How Much for Just the Podcast is a Grouse Media production. The theme music you heard was the Picard rap by Nikolai Kingsley. For all links to our stuff, we have lots of stuff, go to prettygrouse.com.
Where the hell are we? Where the hell are we? Transporter room 3. Engage. I'll go ahead. Energize.
We leaf through stuff on our phones, and then I just edit it out afterwards like it never happened. It's great. But
It's like we know all of this stuff off the top of our heads.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't.
Oh, no.
I've actually never seen Star Trek.